Hello, dear students. Welcome back. Today we'll start with class 10 Democratic Politics, chapter number 7, Outcomes of Democracy. And this is the first part of the chapter. So finally, in this tour of democracy, students, which we started in class 9th, has finally come to an end. Now, whatever we have studied about democracy, today in this chapter we are going to evaluate that. We are going to evaluate democracy. We are going to evaluate democracy, and that's why this chapter, Outcomes of Democracy, is important. It is equally important. If we toured democracy, we studied about democracy, we studied about different aspects and concepts of democracy. So now it's the time that we need to evaluate it. So we'll discuss the outcomes. Our outcome basically is positive and is qualified also. If I am saying qualified, it means quality of government, economic well-being, inequality, social differences and conflicts, and finally freedom and dignity. So we are going to evaluate democracy on these aspects. Now, one thing is very clear, students, that democracy is the best form of government. It is a better form of government when compared with dictatorship or any other alternative. Whenever we compare it with any other alternative, whether dictatorship, monarchy, or rule by a religious leader, we find that democracy is better among all. Now, why it is better? Why we feel that democracy is much better than this? Here are some points. It promotes equality among citizens, enhances the dignity of individual, improves the quality of decision making, provides a method to resolve conflicts, and finally allows room to correct its mistakes. It is a legitimate government. It is slow, less efficient, and not very responsive or clean. It is people's own government. It has its own ability to generate its own support. Now, let us discuss, when we talk to people around us, most of them support democracy against other alternatives. Yes, correct. And what are the other alternatives? Monarch, military, rule by military, or religious leader. But not so many of them would be satisfied with democracy. Yes, we find practically, theoretically, we find that democracy is best form of government. But we are not satisfied with democracy in practice. Means theoretically it is okay, but practically it is not. We are not satisfied actually. So we face a dilemma. Democracy is seen to be good in principle. Means theoretically when we read it, we find it very good. This is the best form of government. But felt to be not so good in practice. But when we practice it, we find it very difficult. Now, this dilemma invites us to think about the outcomes of democracy. This is why we are studying about the outcomes of democracy. What is the result when we evaluate democracy? What is the outcome? What is the result we are getting? That's why we are going to study this chapter, that is outcomes of democracy. Here we'll discuss about different aspects, the aspects on which we have evaluated, and finally in this tour of democracy we are in front of you with some results. The very first result is democracy is just a form of government. It can only create conditions for achieving something. Citizens have to take advantage and achieve goals. Now, the thing is, students, that democracy is merely a condition. It depends on the people that how they take advantage of it. There is no miracle in democracy. It is not that it is something, some miracle is there or some miracle is done by democracy. No, it is not that. It is merely a condition. It is up to us that how much advantage we take out of it. Just in several other times also I have given you some examples that it is like a gun. It is like a gun. If it is in the hand of dacoit, it will kill the people. If it is in hand of bad people, it will kill the people. But if the same thing is in the hands of the brave hearts, or we can say the police or army, it can protect us. The same thing is with democracy also. So, let us start the first one, that is democracy is accountable, it is responsive and legitimate government. Now, if I am saying that democracy is accountable, so I mean to say that it is answerable to the people. It is answerable to the people. The most basic outcome of democracy should be that it produces a government that is accountable to the citizens and responsive to the needs of expectation. Now, just imagine a government that may take decisions very fast. Just imagine that a government is there and it takes very quick decision. But it may take decisions that are not accepted by the people and may therefore face problems. In contrast, the democratic government will take more time to follow procedures before taking any decision. But the difference is that the decision which is taken in quick time is not acceptable to the people. But in democracy, we pay the time and the same filtered result is also there, and those results are acceptable to the people. Just imagine North Korea. Just imagine about North Korea, their dictatorship is there and decisions are taken within a fraction of second. And compare North Korea with India. Here decisions are taken, we take long times. But in North Korea, it is not acceptable by the people. People find it very difficult to accept those decisions taken in North Korea. But in India, it is acceptable. Why? Because we have paid in terms time. Time we have given. Filtered result is there. Filtered decision is there. So this was the first thing, decision making. Second one, democracy ensures that decision making will be based on norms and procedure. Proper norms and procedure is there. What happens? First of all, a bill is presented in Lok Sabha. After that, debate and discussion is there. And finally, voting is there. And when the bill is passed in Lok Sabha, it is sent to Rajya Sabha. So a procedure is there. After that, finally the bill goes to President of India to sign the bill. And finally the bill becomes a law. It means we follow certain procedures. which makes those decisions very strong. It gives it a good base. Why? Because our representatives have taken those decisions on our behalf. One more very good thing about this is that a citizen who wants to know if a decision was taken through the correct procedure, then he can find it out. He or she has the right and the means to examine the process of decision making. RTI you might have heard about, Right to Information Act. And this is what you call is transparency. This is what you call is transparency. So the first thing I told you was time given, second decision making, and finally let us move to the third one. If we talk of any of the democracies, we find that regular, free and fair election, open public debate on major policies, legislation and citizens, right to information about the government and its functioning. The actual performance of democracies shows a mixed record on this. Democracies have had greater success in setting up regular and free elections and in setting up conditions for open public debate, but most democracies fall short of election that provide a fair chance to everyone in subjecting every decision to public debate. Every democracy conducts free and fair election, but the important one is fair chance should be given. Means the ruling party has equal chances of winning and losing too. It may be reasonable to expect from democracy a government that is attentive to the needs of people and demands of the people and is largely free of corruption. But the record of democracy is not impressive on these two counts. Corruptions every day, not every day, we can't say every day, but somehow or other we find that corruption is there. Democratic government is legitimate government. It may be slow, less efficient, not always very responsible or clean, but democratic government is people's own government. So this is all about your what we say that democracy is accountable, responsive and legitimate. Now after this we are going to discuss about what can we expect from government. We can expect the government to be attentive to the needs of the people, of their demand, and at the same time government has to be free of corruption also. Now our next topic is economic growth and development. First of all, let me read the slide. After that we will discuss in detail. In 1950-2000, dictatorship have higher rate of economic growth. If we compare democracy with dictatorship, since 1950 to 2000, dictatorship have higher rate of economic growth in comparison to democracy. But I should tell you students that economic development of a country depends on several other factors also, and that is country's population size, global situation, cooperation from other countries and economic priorities adopted by the countries. Economic priorities means economic policies, relationship with foreign countries in terms of trade and commerce, global situation, country's population size. These are the sub factors. It is not that dictatorship is having higher income, people have higher income. It is not that. and in democracies we have lesser income. No, actually economic development depends on these four issues. Now let us talk in detail. If we consider all democracies and all dictatorship for the 50 years between 1950 and 2000, dictatorship have slightly higher rate of economic growth. This inability of democracy to achieve higher economic development worries us. But this alone cannot be reason to reject democracy. As we have already studied in economics, that economic development depends on several factors: country's population size, global situation, cooperation from other countries, economic priorities adopted by the country. However, the difference in the rate of economic development between less developed countries with dictatorship and democracies is negligible. Negligible means very minimum difference is there. Overall, we cannot say that democracy is a guarantee of economic development, but we can expect democracy not to lag behind dictatorship in this respect. It is equally, both are equal and the difference is negligible. So we cannot say that economic growth and development only depends upon the nature of government, but it depends on these four, 1, 2, 3 and 4, these four situations. Now the next one is reduction of inequality and poverty. Let me read the slide, after that we will discuss in detail. A small number of ultra rich enjoy a highly disproportionate share of wealth and income. Their share in total income is increasing. People at the bottom of society have very little to depend upon. You can clearly see the images. On one side, beggar is there, and on the other side, a person, a gentleman with suit is moving across the road. On the other, this one, in this picture, you can see tall buildings. On the other hand, you can see jhuggis and jhopris. In actual life, democracy do not appear to be very successful in reducing economic inequalities. Means those who are rich, they are richer. Those who are poor, they are the poorest. The poor constitute a large proportion of our voters, and no party will like to lose their votes. Yet, democratically elected government do not appear to be keen to address the question of poverty as we expect from them. They do not appear to be very serious regarding this. The situation is much worse in some countries. I am not saying that it is in India, but in some other democracies also. Take example of Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, democracy is there. In Bangladesh, more than half of its population lives in poverty. More than half of the population. People in several poor countries are now dependent on the rich countries even for food supplies. Even for food supplies, students. So, in this chapter, in this part, we have studied that why we are studying the outcomes of democracy and how is democracy better than other forms of government. After that, we discussed that democracy, the first outcome, that is democracy is accountable, responsive and legitimate government. In that we talk about the time taken to make any decision in democracy is slower, but we get benefit from it. After that we discussed that decision making is based on norms and procedures. After that, we studied about regular, free and fair election, and after that we studied about the second outcome, that is economic growth and development, and after that we studied about reduction of inequality and poverty. These are the slides. You can make notes out of it. Thank you and have a nice day ahead.